Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're tackling something I know we've all felt at one point or another, the crushing weight of modern workplace burnout. Look, we live in an era of practically zero attention span, nonstop change, and a downright intense drive for results. People are calling it HR 5.0, this wild landscape where we're desperately trying to mash up advanced tech, AI, and data tracking with, actual human-centric leadership. But let's be totally honest about the reality here. Between the endless barrage of Slack pings, the aggressively ambitious OKRs, the AI productivity trackers, and the relentless pursuits of quarterly metrics, it is incredibly stressful. Employees are feeling completely squeezed, and honestly, burnout is practically an epidemic at this point. So let's dive into a wild idea. In this hyper-competitive era of HR 5.0, what if the absolute best management handbook we have is actually 2,000 years old? I know, it sounds like a massive paradox, right? The idea that you could solve a 21st century digital burnout crisis with a philosophy literally written on palm leaves thousands of years ago is just fascinating. But the ancient Indian scripture, the Bhagavad Gita, offers a really profound framework, and it addresses the exact psychological pressures we're dealing with right now. We're going to explore how we can take its timeless wisdom and actually apply it to cultivate stress-free, deeply motivated, and high-performing teams today. Here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with the modern burnout crisis, then explore ancient wisdom for HR, unpack the Nishkama Karma formula, see where psychology meets philosophy, discuss leadership synergy, and finally, wrap up with a sustained performance blueprint. Let's get into it.
All right, stop number one, the modern burnout crisis and the heavy weight of the results-driven workplace. Now, look at this stark contrast. Modern behavioral science totally agrees that an obsession with outcomes is basically a breeding ground for anxiety, burnout, and profound disappointment. Just picture a modern employee literally pulling their hair out, completely consumed by the stress of potentially missing a quarterly sales target. Their entire sense of self-worth is tied to that one single outcome. The ancient approach, it flips the script entirely. Imagine instead an ancient craftsman finding deep, genuine satisfaction purely in the artistry of their daily tasks. By focusing entirely on the effort and the process and mentally detaching from the immediate tangible results, we actually foster more creativity, we maintain much more consistent performance, and we eliminate that paralyzing fear of failure. Which brings us to Section 2, Ancient Wisdom for HR, where we'll be exploring Sankhya Yoga. Okay, be honest. Have you ever fired off a hastily written angry email right after a major project completely tanked? Or, on the flip side, maybe you've seen a colleague make a totally reckless business decision right after landing a huge client, just riding that high of success. Well, samatva, which is an ancient term for equanimity, is essentially the psychological armor that prevents exactly that. It's the active practice of maintaining mental balance and stability, whether you're experiencing massive success or crushing failure. And what's really cool is how this perfectly mirrors Daniel Goleman's modern organizational theories on emotional intelligence. The ability to regulate your emotions, to not get excessively hyped by a win or completely derailed by a loss, is universally recognized today as a core component of rock-solid leadership. Moving right along to Section 3, the Nishkama Karma formula, decoding verse 2.47. So what exactly is Nishkama Karma? Basically, it's all about desireless work. Now, let's clear something up right away. Desireless work absolutely does not mean aimless, lazy work. It means performing your duties with full 100% commitment while renouncing your emotional attachment to the final results. You still have targets, you still have OKRs, but your self-worth isn't intrinsically tied to hitting them perfectly every single time. It is definitely not an excuse to dodge accountability. Your actions are absolutely still directed toward definite goals, but your psychological focus, that is entirely on the execution, the process, and finding joy in the effort itself. The Bhagavad Gita puts it like this: you have the right to perform your duty, but not to the fruits thereof. Wow, talk about a profound reminder. This single line really holds the key to modern stress management because it redirects all our wasted energy from the uncontrollable future straight back to the controllable present. Just bring this into the modern boardroom for a second. You can completely control the pitch you deliver to a client. You can control your preparation, your energy, your slide deck, but you cannot fundamentally control if that client actually signs the contract. Let's actually deconstruct this complex verse into 4 actionable steps. First up, you have the right and the fundamental eligibility to work. Second, you have no right to dictate the fruits, meaning you can't technically guarantee the outcome.
Why? Because the outcome is dependent on a massive combination of external factors like random market shifts or competitor actions that you just can't predict. Third, you are not the sole reason for the outcome. And fourth, do not become attached to inaction. This is a crucial caveat. Detaching from results often makes people think, well, I should just give up and do nothing then. But this philosophy strictly forbids that. Just because you can't control the outcome doesn't mean you throw in the towel. The action itself is where the joy is.
Next up, Section 4, Psychology Meets Ancient Philosophy, Bridging the Eras.
This is where my mind was completely blown. It's incredible how perfectly the Gita's three gunas, or essentially qualities of human behavior, maps straight onto Sigmund Freud's dynamic personality theory. Think of tamas, which represents ignorance and inertia. That's like the chronic procrastinator in the office, and it aligns flawlessly with the id, our primal urges. Then you've got rajas, representing passion and activity. This is your ruthlessly ambitious yet highly stressed go-getter, mapping perfectly to the ego's drive. Finally, sattva, representing purity and balance, acts just like the superego's moral compass. And that right there is the ideal state of an effective leader, someone who has managed to achieve equilibrium among all these driving forces.
And the psychological validation doesn't stop there. Think about this. A 2 millennia-old spiritual text perfectly predicted a landmark 1939 psychological study. The Gita explicitly warns that unfulfilled desires lead directly to anger, which clouds your judgment and causes an eventual downfall. Well, this is completely validated by John Dollard's frustration-aggression hypothesis. When our obsessive desire for a specific work outcome gets blocked, it inherently results in frustration and aggression. It destroys team cohesion, it ruins company culture, and it totally shatters our own mental peace.
All right, Section 5, Leadership and Team Synergy, using ancient metaphors for modern management. Imagine an ancient Avengers-style dream team for your executive board. That's essentially how management trainers are reinterpreting the Pandavas, these epic characters from the Mahabharata, as a comprehensive framework for balanced leadership. You need the calm, unbiased justice of someone like Yudhishthira, right alongside the aggressive, tireless work appetite of Bhim. You absolutely need the sharp, skilled execution of Arjuna, paired with the mindful, empathetic team listening of Nakul and Sahadev. And overseeing this whole operation? The supreme mind control represented by Krishna and the emotional intelligence represented by Draupadi. To have a high-functioning HR 5.0 team, you absolutely require a delicate balance of all these diverse traits working together. This all builds to an absolutely crucial management truth. You need the indispensable synergy of profound strategic wisdom and decisive, skilled execution. Because true prosperity in business, it doesn't come from just having a brilliant strategy on a whiteboard. Nor does it come from blind, unguided action. Grounding this in everyday business terms. Strategy without execution is just daydreaming in a boardroom. But execution without strategy, that's just expensive chaos. True success only happens when wisdom deeply informs action, and action is constantly guided by that wisdom. Finally, Section 6, the Sustained Performance Blueprint, how to actually thrive in HR 5.0. Let's use one more vivid metaphor, this time from the Ramayana, Rama's victory chariot. Think of your company as this mighty chariot. The wheels carrying you forward, those are your courage and fortitude. The banners you're flying high represent your truthfulness and solid corporate conduct. The horses driving you forward aren't just about brute strength. They're a blend of self-control and compassion. The driver steering the whole operation must be guided by a higher ethical purpose. And your ultimate shield against the wild, unpredictable chaos of the market? Dispassion, that equanimity we've been talking about this whole time. So bringing all this back to the modern boardroom, we get the effort-result matrix. Here's the big takeaway. If we shift our organizational focus entirely to the high-effort quadrant, completely independent of immediate results, we can literally cure the burnout crisis. I know, it requires a massive cultural shift. It means actually rewarding an employee who worked incredibly hard on a massive project that ultimately failed just because of a sudden market crash, rather than punishing them for the final numbers. When employees are evaluated for their dedication, their ethical execution, and their high effort, you build immense resilience. You build a culture where people are intrinsically motivated, not just scared of missing a quota. We've covered a lot today. You have seen the immense psychological toll of obsessing over outcomes. And you've got this 2,000-year-old blueprint for true equanimity and sustained performance. So I want to leave you with a provocative thought. When you log in tomorrow and you face the inevitable crushing pressures of the modern workplace, are you going to work for the fruit, or are you going to work for the joy of the effort? The choice, and ultimately your peace of mind, is entirely up to you.